A storm unlike any other has swept through the royal family, and at the very centre of it stands Princess Beatrice with a revelation so explosive that it has left both the palace and the public gasping for answers. Her claim is simple in words, but devastating in impact. Her father, Prince Andrew, and Queen Camilla struck a secret pact hidden away from the world. A quiet arrangement that traded Andrew's withdrawal from public life for Camilla's promise to shield him from the harshest consequences of scandal. If you're fascinated by the unseen power struggles, the secret letters, and the whispered deals that shape the monarchy from within, then you'll want to subscribe right now, because what we're about to uncover will change the way you see the crown forever. This is not just another royal story, it is a drama of betrayal, legacy, and the crumbling of walls that were once thought impenetrable. The claim by Beatrice becomes even more shocking when you consider who she is and what she represents. For much of her life, Beatrice has been cast in the role of a loyal daughter, standing firmly beside her father during his most difficult public battles, offering support when the rest of the world seemed determined to cast him aside. She was, for many, the symbol of a daughter's unwavering devotion. But now that image has been shattered. In its place stands a woman who has chosen truth over loyalty. A woman who decided that her silence, no matter how protective it once felt, was only deepening the cracks within the monarchy. Beatrice has remade herself in a single moment, stepping out of her father's shadow and into a new role. One that might redefine her place in the family forever. And it is this transformation, as much as the alleged pact itself, that has shaken the monarchy to its core. Adding fuel to the fire is the evidence Beatrice claims to have discovered. Sealed letters marked with Camilla's insignia, and documents worded so carefully they almost seemed crafted to conceal while still speaking volumes. These were not ordinary letters, she insists, but records that spoke of discretion and silence. Words that in any other context might be innocent, but here carried the weight of secrets that were never meant to surface. To Beatrice, these weren't just papers, they were proof of an understanding, tangible evidence that the crown had sanctioned silence in exchange for survival. And as soon as she made that claim public, those letters became symbols of something larger, the hidden machinery of power inside the palace, where deals are struck not in daylight, but in the hush of closed rooms. But perhaps what makes this story even more unsettling is the ghostly figure of Diana, Princess of Wales, whose legacy continues to loom over every generation of the royal family. Somewhere in the swirl of evidence, a resurfaced letter appeared to connect Diana's name, however indirectly, to the same web of secrecy. For the public, that was the breaking point. Diana's memory has always carried an emotional charge, and to suggest her legacy might have been entangled, even as a shadow, was enough to spark outrage. It reawakened old wounds, reignited public distrust, and reminded everyone that Diana's story is not just a chapter in the past, but a thread that still weaves itself through the present. The way Beatrice chose to share her revelation only magnified its power. She did not speak quietly behind closed doors, nor did she whisper her concerns into the ears of trusted allies. Instead, she sat for a televised interview, a bold move that defied the oldest and most sacred of royal codes. Never complain, never explain. In doing so, she took the palace's most guarded secrets and laid them bare before a global audience. Millions watched, listened, and replayed her words, searching for meaning, truth, and implications the palace could no longer control. This was no slip of the tongue or casual remark. This was a calculated break from royal protocol, a deliberate act of exposure that shifted the narrative away from rumour and into undeniable reality. The palace's response, or rather its lack of one, only deepened the crisis. Vague statements emerged, words chosen so carefully they offered no answers, no clarifications, only more questions. And as the silence dragged on, suspicion grew. If there was nothing to hide, why not deny it outright? If Beatrice's claims were baseless, why not protect the crown with firm truth? Instead, the ambiguity spoke louder than denial ever could, and in that vacuum of certainty, the public's imagination filled in the gaps with doubt and mistrust. At its core, this is a story about more than one secret pact. It is about the clash between transparency and tradition, between the need to preserve dignity and the fear of what happens when the truth is revealed. Beatrice, once a background figure in the royal narrative, has become the face of this clash. Her revelation forcing a reckoning the family cannot easily escape. This is why her actions matter so deeply. By exposing what she believes is a carefully constructed cover-up, she has torn at the very fabric of secrecy that has long shielded the crown from scrutiny. And now the world watches with rapt attention, asking questions the palace cannot easily answer. What else lies hidden in the shadows? How far does this culture of silence extend? And most importantly, can the monarchy survive when one of its own breaks the code of loyalty and places truth above tradition? This is only the beginning of a story that promises to unravel further with each passing day. And if you want to stay ahead of every twist and turn, subscribe right now and keep watching. Because what lies ahead is not just about Camilla's reputation or Andrew's retreat, but about the monarchy itself and the battle for its very survival.
Princess Beatrice's revelation didn't just arrive as a headline. It erupted like a fault line tearing through the palace walls, exposing cracks that had long been hidden beneath the glittering facade of tradition. The moment she went public with her claims of a pact between Prince Andrew and Queen Camilla, the monarchy was thrust into uncharted territory. What made the scandal particularly gripping was the sense of betrayal. Betrayal within the family, betrayal of the public's trust, and perhaps even betrayal of the very ideals the crown was meant to embody. Beatrice's words weren't whispered rumors passed down through tabloids. They were spoken with conviction in front of cameras, delivered by someone who had lived her entire life within the palace gates. That authenticity is what turned speculation into an undeniable crisis. And for those watching from the outside, the shock was magnified by the sheer audacity of Beatrice breaking the unspoken law of royal silence. It was as if centuries of carefully constructed dignity had been shattered in a single, unflinching breath. Central to this drama is the alleged pact itself. According to Beatrice, her father agreed to retreat from public duties, a step that might have seemed like an admission of defeat or an attempt at quiet dignity. But behind that retreat, she claims, was a far more troubling bargain: Camilla's hand in keeping explosive documents under wraps and shielding Andrew from the full weight of accountability. It wasn't merely about Andrew's role in the monarchy, it was about controlling the narrative, ensuring that certain truths never reached the public domain. The existence of sealed letters marked with Camilla's insignia only intensified the firestorm, because they suggested something tangible, something beyond whispers, a paper trail that, if true, confirmed that power within the monarchy was not only exercised through ceremony and duty, but through secrecy and strategic silence. This revelation has left the monarchy facing one of its most difficult dilemmas in modern memory. On one hand, to ignore Beatrice's words is to risk allowing the public to believe the worst, that a hidden pact existed and that those at the heart of the crown are capable of silencing truth for convenience. On the other hand, to confront the claims directly risks further exposure of what might lie within those documents, or what other secrets could be brought into the light if scrutiny intensifies. For the royal household, it is a no-win situation. Silence breeds suspicion, but words could unravel everything. Beatrice's personal transformation has only added another layer to the spectacle. She was not seen as a revolutionary figure before this moment. In fact, she was often portrayed as quiet, reserved, and dedicated to the duties expected of a royal born outside the direct line of succession. Yet her decision to act, to step forward with a revelation of this scale, has turned her into an unexpected central player in the story of the crown's survival. What makes it so powerful is the contrast. The daughter who once shielded her father now exposing him, the royal who once upheld the code of silence now breaking it, the figure once overlooked suddenly commanding the world's attention. The public reaction has been a mixture of fascination and fury. For many, the idea that secret letters and private pacts could shape the fate of the monarchy feels like confirmation of long-held suspicions that what is presented to the public is not always what happens behind the palace walls. And for others, Beatrice's courage to speak out has sparked admiration, framing her as a woman willing to place integrity above family loyalty. It is this duality, admiration for her bravery and anger at what the letters imply, that has turned her revelation into more than just a scandal. It has become a cultural moment, one that forces people to question what kind of monarchy exists today and what kind it should become. Adding to the sense of drama is the shadow of Princess Diana. The resurfaced letter hinting at Diana's indirect connection to the deal poured gasoline on an already raging fire. Diana remains a figure of immense emotional power, her legacy tied to themes of truth, vulnerability, and a battle against the very secrecy that Beatrice now claims to have uncovered. To invoke Diana's name, even unintentionally, was to remind the public of wounds that never truly healed. It connected the present scandal to a past tragedy, turning Beatrice's words into more than an allegation of a pact. They became part of a broader narrative about how the crown has navigated truth and deception for decades. For the palace, the timing could not have been worse. This scandal emerged in an era when global audiences are watching more closely than ever, when social media ensures that no revelation can be contained, and when every word, every pause, every vague statement becomes fodder for worldwide speculation. Beatrice's interview spread within hours, amplified across continents, translated into countless headlines, and dissected in endless commentary. It was no longer just a story in Britain. It became a global spectacle, one that forced the monarchy into a spotlight they could not control. What happens next is anyone's guess. Will the palace attempt to draw a line under the scandal, hoping that silence and time will make it fade? Or will Beatrice's revelation be the beginning of a far greater reckoning, one that exposes layers of secrecy previously thought unbreakable? For now, all that is certain is that the monarchy has entered a new chapter, one where the voice of a princess, once considered peripheral, has shaken its foundations more than any outside critic ever could. The scandal surrounding Princess Beatrice's revelation entered an entirely new dimension when she described the moment she uncovered the supposed evidence: sealed letters marked with Queen Camilla's insignia, paired with documents filled with language that seemed carefully designed to conceal the truth while still ensuring silence. For Beatrice, these papers were not ordinary correspondence. They were signs of something orchestrated, a secret arrangement meant to control outcomes and suppress information that could have damaged the monarchy beyond repair. The mere mention of such physical evidence was enough to ignite a frenzy of speculation. What exactly did the letters contain? Were they explicit in their promises of discretion, or were they vague enough to allow for plausible deniability? This uncertainty became part of the scandal itself, as the world debated whether the monarchy's most senior figures had truly committed their words to paper, and if so, why such records had been allowed to exist in the first place. What makes the existence of these letters so striking is the contrast between the monarchy's public image and the private dealings Beatrice suggests lay hidden behind closed doors. For generations, the royal family has cultivated an aura of duty, stability, and continuity, projecting an image of tradition untarnished by scandal. But the claim that letters existed, carrying Camilla's seal and speaking in terms of discretion and silence, undermines that carefully curated facade. If true, they point not to a monarchy that merely reacts to crises, but to one that actively manages and conceals them, crafting deals in the shadows while presenting unity in the spotlight. This dissonance between image and alleged reality has left the public not just questioning the individuals involved, but questioning the institution itself. For Beatrice, revealing the existence of these documents was more than a daughter turning against her father or a princess daring to speak out. It was a deliberate act of defiance against secrecy. It marked her as someone unwilling to play the role of quiet bystander, even if that role had been thrust upon her since birth. Her choice to shine a light on what she considered a cover-up represents a dramatic departure from the norms that govern royal behavior, norms designed to keep disputes hidden and reputations intact. By speaking of letters and documents, she grounded her allegations in something concrete, transforming her claims from mere speculation into something that felt, at least to the public, tangible and undeniable. The ripple effect was immediate. Across the media, commentators pored over Beatrice's description of the letters, debating their authenticity, their contents, and what their existence could mean for the monarchy's credibility. For many, the story was no longer just about Andrew stepping back or Camilla protecting him. It was about the evidence itself, the proof that something had been written down and preserved. In the digital age, where almost nothing remains secret for long, the idea that such letters could one day be leaked or revealed in full added a new level of tension. The public didn't just want to know if the letters existed, they wanted to read them, to see for themselves what had been hidden. The letters also raised troubling questions about Camilla's role in the arrangement. If she had indeed been involved in shielding Andrew, what did that say about her position as queen consort? Was she acting to protect the monarchy as a whole, or was she protecting Andrew personally? And if the latter, why would she take such a risk for someone whose controversies had already cast a shadow over the family? Beatrice's revelation painted Camilla not as a passive figure swept up in scandal, but as an active participant in shaping its outcome, a role that sits uneasily with her public image as a steadying presence beside the king. Then there was the timing of Beatrice's discovery. For years, she had stood by her father, enduring criticism and defending him against public opinion. Yet something about these letters, about their wording, their implications, their mere existence, seems to have tipped her from loyalty into confrontation. It suggests that the evidence itself was what forced her hand, that she could no longer justify silence once she had seen proof of what she believed was an orchestrated cover-up. This detail makes her revelation not just an act of rebellion but an act of conscience, a decision made in the face of undeniable truth. Perhaps most unsettling of all was the way these documents tied into the resurfaced letter connected to Princess Diana. The suggestion that Diana's legacy, even indirectly, had been caught in the same web of secrecy was enough to reopen old wounds in the public consciousness. Diana had long been seen as a figure of honesty, someone who sought to pull back the curtain on the darker realities of palace life. To have her name linked, however faintly, to a modern-day pact of silence felt like history repeating itself, and it amplified the outrage surrounding Beatrice's claims. The past and present collided in those letters, turning a single scandal into something much larger, a generational story about secrecy, silence, and betrayal within the crown. For Buckingham Palace, the danger of these letters lies not just in what they may contain, but in the symbolism they carry. Even if their wording was vague, even if their promises were subtle, their existence alone suggests that the monarchy operates through hidden channels that are vulnerable to exposure. And in an age when transparency is demanded more than ever, that symbolism is almost as damaging as the contents themselves. Princess Beatrice's transformation from dutiful royal daughter to outspoken truth-teller has become one of the most extraordinary elements of this entire saga. For years, she was seen as someone firmly rooted in loyalty to her father, Prince Andrew. Through his controversies, she stood close by his side, projecting support when others in the family had distanced themselves. Her reputation was built on discretion, on staying out of the spotlight, and on embodying the quiet loyalty expected of a royal not directly in line for the throne. But everything changed the moment she chose to expose what she claimed was a pact between Andrew and Queen Camilla. In an instant, she shifted from a background figure in the royal household to the center of one of the most consequential crises in modern royal history. The decision to speak out was not a small act of defiance, it was a radical departure from centuries of tradition. Royals have long been taught that silence is survival, that to break rank and speak freely risks tearing the veil that protects the monarchy from scrutiny. Yet Beatrice defied that code deliberately, trading her father's trust for what she believed was a higher duty, protecting the monarchy's integrity. This choice paints her in two very different lights, depending on where one stands. To some, she is a betrayer who turned on her own father at the worst possible moment. To others, she is a reformer, a courageous figure willing to prioritize truth over blood ties. It is this very tension, between loyalty and honesty, that has made her story resonate so deeply with the public. What drove Beatrice to make this leap? According to those close to her, it was a gradual realization that silence was no longer protecting the monarchy, it was undermining it. The discovery of sealed letters and discreet documents reportedly confirmed her fears that an arrangement had been struck in secret, one that could destroy trust in the family if it were ever fully exposed. The weight of those papers seems to have forced her hand, convincing her that by remaining quiet, she would only be complicit in a cover-up. Her decision to act was framed not as rebellion, but as duty. In her eyes, she wasn't undermining the monarchy, she was saving it from further decay. The emotional core of her transformation, however, lies in her relationship with Diana's legacy. The resurfacing of a letter that tied Diana, even indirectly, to this story appears to have stirred something deep within Beatrice. Diana remains a towering figure of honesty and vulnerability, remembered for speaking truths that others dared not. For Beatrice, linking her revelation to Diana's memory may have provided both courage and justification. If Diana could break the silence of her time, then perhaps Beatrice could do the same for hers. In that sense, she is not just exposing a pact, she is stepping into a role defined by the very woman whose shadow still looms over the crown. The impact of her transformation on the public has been profound. Overnight, Beatrice became more than a royal princess, she became a symbol. Admirers see her as someone brave enough to turn against secrecy and prioritize integrity, while critics accuse her of betraying family loyalty for personal attention. This polarization has made her one of the most talked about royals in recent memory, a position she had never held before. And regardless of whether one supports or condemns her, the fact remains that she has redefined her role within the monarchy in a way that cannot be undone. For the palace, Beatrice's transformation represents both a crisis and an opportunity. On one hand, her revelations have created chaos, undermined trust, and exposed fractures that the monarchy would rather have kept hidden. On the other, her new image as a truth-teller offers a glimpse into what the monarchy might need to survive in the modern world: transparency, honesty, and a willingness to confront its shadows. Whether or not the institution embraces that path remains uncertain, but Beatrice has shown that it is possible to be both royal and outspoken, a combination that could alter the family's future in ways no one anticipated. What makes her transformation even more striking is that it was not born out of rebellion for rebellion's sake. Beatrice did not set out to topple the crown or humiliate her family. Her revelation came across as a reluctant but necessary act, a choice made in the face of evidence too heavy to ignore. This reluctant heroism has resonated with many, painting her less as a disruptor and more as a reluctant savior, someone who sacrificed her own peace of mind and perhaps her place within her family for the sake of truth. In the broader sweep of royal history, her decision will likely be remembered as a turning point. Princess Beatrice, once overlooked as a quiet figure, has written herself into the narrative of the crown's survival. And the question now is whether her transformation will inspire others within the family to break the silence, or whether she will stand alone, isolated but unshaken, as the lone voice who dared to tell the truth. The palace's response to Princess Beatrice's revelation was as dramatic in its silence as the revelation itself was in its candor. When the interview aired and her words spread across the globe, the expectation was that Buckingham Palace would quickly and decisively move to control the narrative. Yet instead of clarity, the public was met with vague statements, carefully chosen phrases that acknowledged the challenges of recent events without addressing the allegations head-on. This strategy, a familiar tactic in royal crises, backfired spectacularly. Rather than quelling speculation, it only fueled it. People began to ask, if there was truly nothing to hide, why couldn't the palace deny Beatrice's claims outright? The silence was interpreted as an admission, a confirmation wrapped in hesitation. For Queen Camilla, the scandal represented a devastating blow to her public image. For years, she had worked tirelessly to recast herself as a figure of stability beside the king, a woman who had weathered the storms of public disapproval and emerged as a steadying presence in the monarchy. But Beatrice's revelation reframed her entirely. No longer was she the consort who brought balance. Instead, she was painted as the architect of secrecy, someone who allegedly struck deals in the shadows to protect Andrew and preserve appearances. Whether or not the claims were true, the perception alone was enough to tarnish her reputation. For critics, the idea of Camilla shielding Andrew revived old wounds and resurrected suspicions that she was always willing to prioritize personal interest over the crown's dignity. Prince William's intervention only intensified the pressure on Camilla. In a rare and bold move, he reportedly demanded that she be stripped of her patronages tied to Princess Diana's humanitarian causes. This was no small gesture. It was symbolic, an unmistakable signal that he was aligning himself with Diana's legacy and distancing himself from anything that threatened to taint it. The move not only drew a sharp contrast between William and Camilla, but it also positioned him as a reformer, someone willing to act decisively where others hesitated. For the public, it was a clear message. William was stepping forward as the figure of accountability, prepared to confront the shadows of the past in a way his elders could not or would not. The fallout stretched far beyond the palace walls. Public trust in the monarchy, already fragile, dipped further in the aftermath of the scandal. Polls revealed a surge of support for William, a groundswell of admiration for Beatrice's courage, and a wave of skepticism directed squarely at Camilla. The image of the monarchy as a united front had been shattered, replaced by the reality of factions and fractures. And while the palace clung to its strategy of carefully worded statements and controlled appearances, the public demanded more transparency, more accountability, and more honesty. The scandal also altered Beatrice's role in ways no one could have predicted. Once a relatively quiet royal, she suddenly found herself at the center of global attention. Her decision to speak out had made her both a lightning rod and a symbol, admired by many for her bravery while criticized by others for her perceived betrayal. Regardless of opinion, one fact was undeniable. She had permanently changed the narrative, both for herself and for the monarchy as a whole. What remained most damaging for the crown was the sense that secrecy was no longer sustainable. In an age of global media and relentless scrutiny, the idea that letters, documents, and pacts could remain hidden felt outdated. The scandal made it clear that the monarchy's future would be shaped not by how well it could conceal its troubles, but by how effectively it could confront them. Camilla's image may have borne the brunt of the fallout, but the entire institution was forced to reckon with the consequences of silence. In the end, the impact of Beatrice's revelation was lasting. It exposed hidden fractures, redefined the roles of both Camilla and Beatrice, and thrust William into the spotlight as a reform-minded figure. Most importantly, it underscored the reality that the monarchy can no longer operate as it once did. Secrecy, once its shield, has now become its greatest liability. And as the dust settles, one question looms larger than all the rest. Can the crown survive in a world where truth, once spoken, cannot be silenced again? What began as a startling revelation from Princess Beatrice has now evolved into one of the most defining episodes of the modern monarchy, a scandal that has not only exposed individual choices but has reshaped how the world views the royal family as a whole. To grasp the full weight of this moment, we must recognize how deeply her words have cut into the foundation of the crown. For centuries, the monarchy has thrived on its ability to maintain mystery, cultivating a sense of distance that gave it power. Silence was its shield, discretion its lifeblood, and the ability to keep secrets was regarded as a skill essential to its survival. But with one televised interview, Beatrice cracked open that shield, declaring to the world that silence was no longer sustainable. What she revealed was not only about a deal between her father and Queen Camilla, but also about the dangers of keeping truth buried for the sake of appearance. In that moment, she became a catalyst for a reckoning, forcing the monarchy into a new era where secrecy itself has become a liability rather than a safeguard. For Queen Camilla, the repercussions have been profound. Even for a royal consort who has faced decades of public scrutiny and learned to weather storm after storm, this scandal is different. Her name is now tied to the idea of backroom pacts and hidden letters, associations that cut to the core of credibility and trust. Once seen as a survivor who had earned her place by enduring criticism, she now finds herself cast in a far darker role, a figure accused of manipulating silence, shielding scandal, and prioritizing self-preservation over transparency. Even if no further evidence emerges, the damage to her image has already been done. Public opinion is not shaped only by facts but by perceptions, and this scandal has cemented her in the public imagination as a figure entangled in secrecy. For Camilla, there may be no way to fully restore what has been lost. Her place in history will now forever be marked by this shadow, regardless of how the palace seeks to reframe it in the years ahead. For Beatrice, however, the consequences are strikingly different. Her decision to speak out has transformed her from a background royal into a central player in one of the most consequential crises of her generation. For years, she was seen as a loyal daughter, someone whose devotion to her father remained unshakable despite controversy. Yet now, she has rewritten her role in the family. By placing truth and integrity above loyalty to a parent, she has signaled a profound shift, not only in her own character, but in what younger royals may come to represent. In breaking with the traditions of silence, she has aligned herself with the public's desire for openness and honesty. While this has undoubtedly created fractures within her family, it has also positioned her as a symbol of courage, someone willing to confront uncomfortable truths no matter the personal cost. History may very well remember her not as a princess on the margins, but as the woman who challenged the institution from within and changed its trajectory forever. Prince William's role in this unfolding drama also cannot be overlooked. At a time when the monarchy faced one of its most public crises in decades, he stepped forward in a way that few expected. By distancing himself from Camilla and demanding that she be stripped of connections to Diana's humanitarian causes, he framed himself as both a reformer and a guardian of his mother's legacy. In doing so, William did more than just respond to scandal. He set a tone for his future reign. He signaled that he would not tolerate secrecy that undermines public trust, and that he intends to lead with transparency, at least in comparison to the generations before him. For supporters of the monarchy, his intervention was a rare moment of reassurance, a sign that the crown could still evolve and survive despite its fractures. Yet for others, it raised an equally troubling question. Why did it take Beatrice's courage to bring the truth to light, and why was the institution not prepared to address these issues before they reached crisis point? The lasting impact of this revelation is one that goes far beyond the reputations of Camilla, Beatrice, or Andrew. What this moment has truly revealed is that the monarchy's old methods of survival, the whispered deals, the unspoken rules, the quiet cover-ups, no longer work in a world where the public demands accountability. Media is too relentless, information travels too quickly, and the appetite for truth has become too great. The public has changed, and in many ways, so has the family itself. Once, it may have been possible to keep certain scandals buried indefinitely. Today, however, even a single voice within the palace walls has the power to topple the silence and reshape the entire narrative. Beatrice proved that silence is no longer protection but poison, and the monarchy now finds itself standing at a crossroads. Looking ahead, the crown must now decide whether it will cling to tradition, hoping that secrecy can still shield it, or whether it will embrace transparency as a means of survival. The choice will not be easy. To open the doors to greater honesty is to risk further revelations, to admit imperfection, and to redefine centuries of royal practice. Yet to remain in the shadows is to risk irrelevance and collapse, as each scandal chips away at public trust. What Beatrice's revelation makes clear is that there is no going back to the old ways. The monarchy has been forced into a new era, one where survival depends not on how well it can keep secrets, but on how honestly it can face the truth. And so, as this scandal fades into history, its legacy will endure. Queen Camilla may never recover fully from the damage. Beatrice will forever be remembered as the princess who dared to break silence. William will be marked as the heir who seized the moment to embody change. But the greatest shift belongs to the monarchy itself, now living in a world where silence is no longer strength but weakness. After this, nothing inside those palace walls can ever be seen the same way again. The question is not whether the crown can survive, but whether it can survive without secrecy, and that, more than any pact or revelation, will determine its future.